There's an old saying among homicide investigators: the most dangerous stranger is often someone who already knows where you sleep. On a freezing night in early January 2021, in the quiet outskirts of Canton, Georgia, a house stood alone near a wooded creek. No alarms, no screams, no warning, just silence. Then, in the darkness of an upstairs bedroom, a woman named Morgan Metzer suddenly woke to a crushing weight pressing down on her chest. Before her eyes could fully adjust, she realized a man was on top of her, dressed entirely in black, face hidden, hands covered, no skin exposed, no fingerprints, no identity, only darkness. And then he spoke. The voice was deep, artificial, almost theatrical, like someone trying very hard not to sound like themselves. The masked intruder forced Morgan onto her stomach and tightened industrial zip ties around her wrists, the plastic bit into her skin. Every click made the nightmare more real. Then he demanded her phone, her passcode, her access. What happened next immediately separated this crime from an ordinary home invasion. Because the intruder didn't wander through the house searching for valuables. He knew exactly what he wanted. Within moments, electronic locks began disengaging throughout the home, one by one, like a ghost moving through a machine. The security system remained silent. No alerts, no warnings, nothing. Almost as if the house itself had been instructed not to fight back. Then the attacker did something even more disturbing. He stripped Morgan of any ability to understand what was happening. A pillowcase was pulled over her head, her vision vanished. The world became darkness. Only sounds remained: the cold winter air, the distant creak, the pounding of her own heart. He led her outside onto a terrace and left her there alone, bound, blind, terrified. Before disappearing, he gave one final instruction: do not move until you hear 2 car horns. Then he walked away, and for nearly 40 minutes Morgan sat there helpless. No footsteps, no voices, no explanation. Only the terrifying realization that somewhere nearby an unseen predator was moving through her home. There's a frightening truth about fear. The human mind can tolerate pain. It can tolerate injury. But uncertainty is where terror grows teeth. Because when you don't know what's coming next, your imagination becomes your enemy. Morgan sat in darkness wondering whether she would live long enough to see morning. Then finally, an engine, a vehicle approaching, and moments later, 2 short honks, exactly as promised. The signal, the footsteps came running, a voice called her name, and instantly she recognized it. It belonged to her ex-husband, Rodney Metzer. At first glance, it looked like a miracle, the perfect rescue, the perfect timing, the perfect hero. But detectives would later learn a chilling lesson. Sometimes the person who arrives to save the victim is the very person who created the nightmare. When deputies arrived, Morgan was rushed into medical care while Rodney gave his statement. His story sounded dramatic. He claimed someone had thrown a rock through his apartment window. He claimed a mysterious voice outside had shouted Morgan's name. He claimed he became worried, got into his car, and drove directly to her home. A concerned ex-husband, a worried father, a man simply trying to help. But experienced investigators know something criminals often forget. Lies are like cracked mirrors. Look closely enough and the fractures always appear. Because Rodney made a mistake, a small one, the kind that destroys entire stories. He admitted he knew Morgan planned to spend New Year's Eve at her parents' house. That was the plan. That was where she was supposed to be. So if he truly feared for her safety, why didn't he go there? Why didn't he call her parents? Why didn't he check the location where he believed she would be? Instead, he drove directly to her isolated home, the one place he supposedly had no reason to suspect she'd be. Detectives noticed, and once suspicion enters an investigation, it rarely leaves empty-handed. Inside the house, investigators uncovered even more troubling details. There were no signs of a chaotic burglary. Expensive electronics remained untouched. Valuables sat exactly where they should. Yet one specific item was missing: a cashier's check worth $56,000. Nothing else mattered to the intruder, just that. To detectives, it felt less like theft and more like theater, a prop placed into a larger performance. And then they found something even stranger: the security system. The basement window had been opened. The protective screen had been carefully cut, but the motion sensor nearby had been repositioned with incredible precision. Not broken, not disabled, adjusted, manipulated. Whoever did it understood how the system worked. Whoever entered that house knew exactly where the blind spots were. That discovery changed everything, because random predators don't usually study home security layouts. Obsessed people do. The deeper investigators dug, the darker the picture became. Digital records show the attacker had used Morgan's own phone to systematically disable security zones and erase activity logs. Not the behavior of a panicked criminal, the behavior of someone following a plan, someone who had rehearsed, someone who understood every step before taking it. Then came the discovery that truly shattered Rodney's image. Forensic analysts examined his phone. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then they located a hidden folder, protected, restricted, secret. Inside were dozens of photographs of Morgan, photos she never knew existed, photos taken while she slept, photos taken while she showered, photos captured through partially opened doors, moments she believed were private, moments she believed belonged only to her. They didn't. Someone had been watching, and that someone appeared to be Rodney. Detectives also discovered images of Morgan's private conversations with another man, not screenshots, photographs of her phone screen, meaning someone had physically accessed her device. Someone had invaded not just her home, but her entire life. There's a disturbing proverb often quoted in stalking investigations: love watches, obsession monitors. By this stage, detectives no longer saw Rodney as a helpful witness. They saw him as something else, a man whose need for control might have survived the end of his marriage. And to understand why, they had to travel backward through time, long before the attack, long before the divorce, long before the lies. Morgan and Rodney met as teenagers. For years, their relationship appeared ideal. He was attentive, protective, dedicated, the kind of partner others envied, the kind of relationship that looked perfect from the outside. But some cages are built so slowly that the person inside never hears the bars being installed. They married, built a family, shared dreams, and then tragedy arrived. Rodney's younger brother died from leukemia. Not long afterward, the couple suffered another devastating loss when their infant son passed away after only 18 days of life. Grief entered the marriage like poison entering water, invisible at first, then impossible to ignore. In the years that followed, Morgan became the emotional center of Rodney's world, his support system, his comfort, his stability. But eventually something shifted. Morgan's career flourished, her business expanded, her success grew. At the same time, Rodney's professional life began collapsing. And sometimes the most dangerous insecurity isn't failure. It's watching someone else succeed while you're falling behind. The balance inside the marriage started changing. Resentment replaced admiration. Control replaced affection. Arguments became manipulation. Manipulation became intimidation. And intimidation slowly became fear. Friends saw pieces of it. Family sensed something was wrong. But abuse rarely begins with a punch. It begins with a story, a lie, a distortion, a campaign designed to make the victim doubt their own reality. According to later accounts, Rodney became increasingly skilled at turning situations upside down. He would create conflict and then blame Morgan. He would provoke reactions and then portray himself as the victim. In one particularly disturbing incident, he allegedly convinced others that Morgan was responsible for behavior she never committed. It was psychological warfare disguised as domestic conflict. And by 2020, the damage had become impossible to ignore. Morgan made a decision that would ultimately trigger everything that followed. She filed for divorce. After years of emotional turmoil, she finally broke free, or at least she thought she did. Because there's another chilling truth investigators know all too well. For controlling individuals, separation is often more dangerous than the relationship itself. The moment control disappears, desperation begins. And somewhere in the shadows of that ending, a new plan was already taking shape. A plan built on deception. A plan built on obsession. a plan that would transform an ex-husband into a masked intruder. And before detectives were finished uncovering the truth, they would discover that the attack on New Year's night had not been a random act of violence at all. It had been something far more frightening, something carefully designed, carefully rehearsed, and terrifyingly personal. Some monsters wear masks. The truly dangerous ones spend years convincing you they never would. By the time detectives shifted their focus toward Rodney Metzer, the image of the devoted ex-husband was already beginning to crack. But what they were about to uncover would reveal something far darker than a simple home invasion. Because this wasn't a crime born from impulse. It was born from obsession. And obsession is patient. It waits. It studies. It learns. Then it strikes when the victim least expects it. As investigators dug deeper into Rodney's past, they discovered a pattern that stretched back years. What initially appeared to be devotion had gradually evolved into something far more sinister. A need for control so overwhelming that it survived the death of a marriage. The divorce papers may have ended the relationship legally. But inside Rodney's mind, the separation was never truly accepted. And that is where the real danger began. There's an old criminal psychology saying, "Possession is what happens when love dies but entitlement survives." After the divorce was finalized, Morgan believed she was finally beginning a new chapter. Friends noticed the change. She seemed lighter, happier, more confident. For the first time in years, she was making plans that didn't revolve around managing Rodney's emotions. But freedom for one person often feels like abandonment to someone obsessed with control. And according to investigators, Rodney wasn't ready to let go. So he created a new strategy. One built on sympathy. One built on guilt. One built on a lie so cruel it would eventually shock even seasoned detectives. Shortly after the divorce became official, Rodney approached Morgan with devastating news. He claimed he was dying, not sick, not recovering, dying. According to the documents he showed her, he had pancreatic cancer, one of the deadliest diagnoses imaginable. The paperwork appeared legitimate. Medical reports, treatment information, specialist evaluations. Everything looked authentic. For Morgan, this changed everything. After 20 years together, despite all the pain, she couldn't ignore someone she once loved facing what appeared to be a death sentence. Compassion overruled caution, and that compassion became the opening Rodney needed. Morgan allowed him back into her home temporarily, not as a husband, not as a partner, simply as a human being she believed was dying. But investigators would later discover a horrifying truth. The cancer never existed. Every document, every email, every report, every diagnosis, a fabrication, a performance, a carefully constructed lie designed to re-enter her life. Think about that for a moment. How far does someone have to fall to fake terminal cancer? How deeply must obsession consume a person before they weaponize sympathy itself? Because this wasn't manipulation anymore. This was calculated emotional predation, and it was only the beginning. As the final days of December approached, tension grew between them. Morgan repeatedly urged Rodney to tell his family about the diagnosis. If he was truly dying, they deserved to know, but Rodney refused, firmly, repeatedly. The more questions she asked, the more resistance she encountered. Eventually, Morgan made another decision. She told him to leave. The temporary arrangement was over. He had to go. For most people, rejection means moving on. For predators, rejection often becomes motivation. And according to investigators, that moment may have accelerated everything. After moving out, Rodney began sending messages, emotional appeals, requests, promises, claims that his final wish was to repair their marriage before he died. But Morgan remained firm. The relationship was over. The door had closed, and Rodney appeared unwilling to accept that reality. Then came the bait, the hook, the piece of the plan that would lure Morgan exactly where he needed her to be. A cashier's check, $56,000. Rodney claimed he had left it beneath the front doormat of her home as repayment for a debt. Morgan had planned to spend New Year's Eve elsewhere, at her parents' house, safe, surrounded by family. But after receiving Rodney's message, she decided to stop by her house briefly and collect the check, exactly as he predicted she would, exactly as he intended. When she arrived, the check was there, waiting, proof that Rodney's story appeared legitimate. What she couldn't know was that the check itself was another illusion. Investigators later discovered Rodney didn't have the money. His accounts were effectively empty. The check wasn't repayment, it was bait, a fishing lure cast into the water, and Morgan unknowingly swam straight toward it. The deeper detectives dug, the more disturbing the planning became. Surveillance footage placed Rodney inside a Lowe's store just 36 hours before the attack. He purchased industrial zip ties, the same type used to restrain Morgan, not months earlier, not weeks earlier, days earlier. Then forensic analysts examined his internet searches. What they found painted a chilling picture: voice-altering techniques, methods involving restricted breathing, ways to access phones, medical document templates, everything necessary to support the fake cancer story. Everything necessary to support the attack. Every search another brick in a wall of premeditation. And then investigators uncovered perhaps the most frightening discovery of all. The basement window, the cut screen, the shifted motion sensor. Those preparations hadn't happened during the attack. They had happened earlier, while Rodney was staying inside the house, sleeping under the same roof, eating meals there, pretending to be a dying man. He had already been preparing the crime scene, already creating blind spots, already building the pathway his future intruder would use. The attack wasn't planned in days. It was planned from inside the victim's home itself. And suddenly every piece clicked into place. The fake illness, the emotional manipulation, the check, the hidden photographs, the security system, the masked attacker, the miraculous rescue. It was all one story, one author, one architect, one man, Rodney Metzer. Investigators determined that after attacking Morgan, Rodney returned to his apartment, changed clothes, disposed of evidence, destroyed her phone, then drove back to her property to stage the rescue, the hero arriving exactly when needed, the concerned ex-husband saving the day, a role he had apparently written for himself from the beginning. There's a chilling quote often repeated by behavioral analysts: "The most dangerous lies aren't told to deceive others. They're told because the liar desperately wants them to become reality." Perhaps Rodney imagined the attack would frighten Morgan enough to run back toward him. Perhaps he imagined becoming her protector again. Perhaps he believed terror would rebuild the dependency that divorce had destroyed. But reality had other plans, because evidence doesn't care about emotions. Evidence doesn't care about stories. Evidence doesn't care about excuses, and the evidence was overwhelming. By August 2021, Rodney faced a choice: go to trial or admit the truth. He chose the latter. In court, Rodney Metzer formally pleaded guilty to all charges. The man who claimed to be a rescuer became what investigators had suspected all along: the perpetrator. The sentence was devastating: 70 years, 25 years in maximum security prison, 45 additional years under strict supervision, a lifetime protective order, no contact, no phone calls, no emails, no messages, no loopholes, no second chances. The court ensured that Morgan and her children would never again be forced into Rodney's shadow. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Morgan finally addressed the court. For years she had lived beneath manipulation, fear, control, gaslighting, obsessive surveillance, psychological warfare. Now she stood in a courtroom and spoke as a survivor, not a victim, a survivor. She told the court the years of pressure were finally over, that the pain had transformed into strength. And when the hearing ended, she walked out of that courthouse carrying something Rodney could never take from her again: freedom. As for Rodney, the final irony would emerge shortly afterward. Authorities conducted legitimate medical evaluations during his incarceration. The results were conclusive: no pancreatic cancer, no terminal illness, no death sentence. The disease that brought him back into Morgan's life had never existed at all. It was a fiction from beginning to end. And that may be the most terrifying part of this entire case. Not the mask, not the zip ties, not the staged home invasion, not even the years of stalking. It's the realization that every warning sign was hidden behind a familiar face. Because evil rarely introduces itself as evil. It arrives disguised as concern. as affection, as loyalty, as love, until one day the mask slips, and the person standing in front of you is someone you never truly knew. There is a proverb that feels especially fitting here. When someone shows you who they are, believe them, because the second face is usually the real one. Morgan Metzer survived, her children survived, and the man who spent years trying to control her life now spends his days behind prison walls. But this case leaves behind a lesson far larger than one crime, a lesson written in fear, deception, and obsession. The stranger in the dark is frightening. The monster under the bed is frightening. But sometimes the greatest danger isn't the person trying to break into your life. It's the person who refuses to leave it. And that is far more terrifying, because the devil doesn't always knock. Sometimes he already has a key.